It's 6 p.m. I will call this May 28th, 2024 regular meeting of the Wenatchee School District School Board to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Esta junta se lleva a cabo en inglés, pero contamos con servicio de traducción si alguien gusta hacer un comentario público o recibir explicaciones en español. Por favor, indique su necesidad. So we will now work through the agenda. Are there any proposed changes or modifications to the agenda?
Just a couple of announcements or acknowledgements. The first one is to note that on our contracts on the consent agenda, there's an agreement for Together for Youth, where I sit as the board chair. There is no conflict of interest with the approval of this contract, but I wanted to disclose that information anyway. And then also I would like to have the district math data review that was slated for tonight's agenda be moved to our June 25th agenda, along with the end of year English language arts data too.
Suppose we should motion to approve the agenda as modified.
I propose we approve the agenda as modified. Rescheduling, tabling the district math data review and acknowledging the contract for Together for You. Second.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All approved, all in all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. The items in the consent agenda were sent to the board and posted online last week. The board's had an opportunity to review the material and individually ask the superintendent any questions on any item on the agenda. This consent agenda includes the minutes from the May 14th, 2024 regular board meeting, the May 20th, 2024 workshop meeting minutes, vouchers and payroll, personnel report, surplus report, contracts, field trips, the comprehensive school counseling program plan, K through 8 science field experience schedule, and the May enrollment report. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Moved by Miranda, seconded by Martin. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now move on to citizen comment. If there's any member of the public that would like to make a citizen comment, we ask that you please sign up online 15 minutes before the meeting or in person. Paper forms are available at the entrance to the meeting room and can be completed and given to the board secretary, Kim White. Unless translation is required, each comment is limited to 3 minutes, and Ms. White will keep a timer that will notify you when your time expires. Individuals that need translation services will be given 4 minutes to make a comment plus time needed to complete interpretation. Please be aware that the board is not obligated to respond to questions or challenges made during public comment, and the board's silence will not signal agreement or endorsement of the speaker's remarks. We appreciate you being here, and if are there any comments signed up?
Yes, we do have one.
Okay.
Jessica O'Connor.
Figured we spent the last 4 months that I wasn't just gonna leave on last Tuesday's meeting. So that's why I'm here, the lone person. So hi, I'm Jessica O'Connor, mom of 2 elementary kids. I left this building 2 weeks ago crying along with many others. Most of us went home and told our families that every single one of y'all decided to close Columbia Elementary at the end of the year, which was 30 days. My 5-year-old, I just want to let you guys know how it all went so my 5-year-old, he says, "What, mom? No way. I have to stay at my preschool forever? I want to go to sissy school next year." My 6-year-old Stacy, "No, mom, no, no, no. What about brother? What about the playground? I'll never get to play on the big toys now. What about Miss Salgado?" That's when I finally told her that her teacher doesn't have a teaching job, and she cried and I cried, but my mom, my sister, my friends, there was a mixture of oohs. "Jess, I'm sorry, but I'm proud of you. You're standing up. You're showing your kids to be involved." My 45-year-old husband, proud of me and always supporting me, held my hand, let me cry as I personally feel like I'm letting my babies down. I didn't do this, but the decision was made, and now it's going to affect us, and I'm really just unsure how it's going to affect them, us, me. I'm scared. My husband said that your guys' the board's written statements were all more than 3 minutes and are all things that should have been said in January at the beginning, not on decision day at the end. Each one of you had very valid points, recommendations, concerns, ideas, all of the last meeting, but that was all at the last meeting before you all said aye. Close Columbia. Where was all or any of this before all of this? What elementary school is next? What middle school is next? And what is the plan going forward? Before I finish tonight, I want to say that I have nothing bad or good to say about any school in Wenatchee or East Wenatchee, other than Castle Rock and Columbia, because I have only ever experienced them, and my interactions have been nothing but great, welcoming, and caring for both schools. I watch Columbia staff, teachers, parents come over week after week, event after event, to fight for my student, their students, our students, not their jobs, their teaching jobs. It was never about them, but about our kids. And I've only seen a handful of other teachers from other schools come to any event or any meeting, teachers, staff, to say that they are going to welcome my babies into their school, that their teachers are, that their kids are. Or for you guys back here, really, I've had very little support from being a new mama in here. This is kind of scary for me. I feel alone. I'm sad. No, I'm disappointed, really. Your decision to close Columbia. I hope we all do better. People are watching. I'm still here. I mean, there's not a lot of people here, but hopefully people are still watching. I'm watching. I'm going to watch all of the meetings. I'm going to be involved. Probably will see you guys. And I really do hope that the students and the teachers at our new schools welcome our Columbia students with loving hearts and hands. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Okay. We will move on then to special presentations. Looks like we have an ASB update first.
Westside's leadership president. And as always, I'm beyond excited to be here and let you know what's been going on at Westside. The Leadership Club hosted prom on May 10th. The theme was Space Odyssey, and it was a blast. At least I know I had one. We had tons of students, lots of pizza, a green screen space photos, and our awesome DJs, JC Rice Productions, who donate their time every year. The Leadership Club also put on our 8th annual spaghetti feed and silent auction May 23rd. We had awesome live music from some talented Wenatchee High School students, Robbie, Cortez, Iris, and Aiden. We had a live art auction selling staff and student artwork, and we would like to thank Superintendent Dr. Corey Callahart and board members Maria Iniguez, Miranda Skaliski, and Martin Barron for coming to support us and, of course, spend their money. We will have a little money. We have a little money to collect, and we're still selling stickers. But in the 2-hour event, we have raised almost $7,500 for Cooper and his family. We would like to invite you, the board, and the community to come out to our first annual art show, which is an open gallery walkthrough of all the spectacular works of art our students have been creating. Our art teacher, Lizzie Rodriguez, will be putting this on Thursday, June 6th. Doors open at 6 p.m. and admission is completely free. We also received our accreditation score from Cognia, and we're thrilled to share our scores with you. To give you context, in order to pass accreditation, you need a score of 220 or higher. Cognia's network average that a school score is around 253. Any score over 300 is considered exceptional, and Westside's score was 325. I'm always sharing all the awesome things students are doing. I would also like to celebrate a few of our awesome teachers at Westside. Molly Ravitz, our science teacher, was selected for a prestigious 5-year Master Teacher Fellowship through Central Washington University. And Sheena Zachary, who just graduated May 11th with her Master's in Diversity and Equity in Education from the University of Illinois. Graduation is right around the corner, and we hope to see you all there as we celebrate all of our graduating students. Graduation this year will be held June 11th at 7 p.m. this year. We'll be having it at the downtown Toyota Center. That is all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Frankie. We appreciate you being here as always. Okay, next up on our agenda tonight is the Washington School Improvement Framework data update. And so we'll have that, we'll have a slideshow that will show on the screen there. And just kick it off. Thank you for the time and opportunity, board members, and your attention to the data that we'll be sharing tonight. As you all know, there are many data points of significance that we share with our board and therefore our community. We have the Smarter Balance Assessment data. We've got Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science, iReady data, classroom-based assessments. We have lots of leading indicators and we have some lagging indicators. And it's not all just about our school report card or the Smarter Balance Assessment, but the comprehensive data package that we can share with the board over time that is important. And the Washington School Improvement Framework is a measure that we feel is important to share with the board and a comprehensive look at our schools and our districts. So we'll jump in. I got to remember to click. Jump into the framework. The Washington School Improvement Framework identifies how schools can improve the education of all students. The framework combines up to 9 indicators, things like graduation rates, attendance, proficiency, state tests in math and English language arts, into a 1 through 10 score. The school score then determines the state's support for the school to improve. The Washington School Improvement Framework was originally released in March of 2018, and there have been later updates as recent as March of 2023. This is the newest data that we have and was released earlier this year in March. And the measures on the slide here, you see the measures combined into the overall. So each indicator noted below is mapped on 1 through 10 score. We'll show that on a different slide. These scores are combined based on the grade span of the school, creating the framework. The lowest performing 5% of school scores establish a support threshold. Any school under the threshold will be identified for comprehensive support, and any school with a student group under the threshold will be identified for targeted support. And that's how our schools enter the school improvement process through the state. So we have lots of schools that will get a Washington School Improvement Framework score, but they're not in school improvement. Okay. And this slide shows specifically how schools in Washington State are measured on the improvement framework, as well as the grades that are impacted for each of the categories shown above here. So if you kind of look at that, you can see that for our ELA, our English language arts and math proficiency, grades 3 through 8 and 10 are the grades that make up those proficiency scores. English language arts and math growth are 4 through 8th grade. Then of course, graduation is 12th grade only. English language learner progress is all grade levels. Regular attendance is all grade levels. 9th grade on track is only 9th grade. And then dual credit is 9 through 12 school programs. Let's see, proficiency. There's different things that you'll see in there. Proficiency is listed. School growth percentile describes a student's growth compared to other students with a similar test score. And then the percentage of students who start out 9th grade, this is kind of how the 9th grade piece is quantified. The percentage of students who start out 9th grade together and graduate in the 4-year time frame, that actually is the graduation rate. Students are included in their cohort based on when they first enter 9th grade, regardless of their expected graduation year. The 9th grade on track piece measures is based on the percentages of first-time 9th grade students who earn credit in all of the attempted courses. So lots of different metrics that we'll be able to look at through today. But the idea is that comprehensive score that we give to the schools are what you're going to see today. Let's see. So comparing our cohort data with peers. Earlier this year, the school board saw some data with our Smarter Balance assessment from Stern's Analytics. And so this is very similar data that combines or shows our schools against other cohorts in the state that have a similarity score index. And so I'll show you what that looks like. So you will not see the same schools in many of the cohorts. And the data was compiled again by the researchers at Stern's Analytics for us. All right. And today's presentation, the data that you'll see, there's a similarity score cohort data in the Washington School Improvement Framework. We're combining like schools with other like schools through enrollment, multilingual learner population, similar percentages of students with disabilities and low socioeconomic status.
Or is that just Washington State schools?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Good question. And here's some questions for us to think about today. Who are the students that are represented in the data? How are we leveraging the strategic plan with this data? What are our next possible steps with this data and information? And when is our next check-in on this actual data? So just some things for you to be thinking about along the way as we go through. We're going to go through each of the schools through the presentation and see where they land with their Washington School Improvement Framework Index, and then how they compare against other cohort folks.
Corey, can I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
You said Stearns Analytic chose, in each one of them that I've seen the preview, you have 10 schools. So they are the same independent people, consultants who chose last time.
Yeah.
What did they choose the other 9 schools with the lowest standard deviation from the measures? How did they choose which 10 to compare to? Do you know?
Well, so the data was actually sorted by the similarity comparison. So the schools that we're actually showing tonight are the closest in similarity based on student population, based on socioeconomic status, and based on multi-language learners.
And that was kind of what I thought. I used the word standard deviation because you had a
Yes.
factor, which it
Mhm.
probably isn't. So basically Stearns have a criteria
Yep.
for determining which are the most comparable schools, and we
Mhm.
use their criteria.
Yep.
Okay.
And you'll see that when we get to the first slide. So yeah, thank you for the clarification. I did sort it at one time based on, I mean, you can sort it however you want, but I did sort it based on the actual Washington School Improvement Framework score. And it was fine if you want to look at who scores the highest and then the next few groups, but it really, the cohort wasn't nearly as close as when you actually sort by the cohort group. So it really shows the most like schools that are like Wenatchee High School, the most like schools that are like Foothills Middle School. Because the further you get away from that similarity score, the less like they are. They're still close, but the less like they are. So thank you for that. Let's see here. Okay, so we'll get a chance to take a look at our first school here. So shown here is Wenatchee High School with the 9 closest schools within the similarity factors. So if you look there, to Martin's point there, the Washington School Improvement Framework score is whatever that school earned. And then we have the school's total enrollment, their total English language learner population, the percent of students that they have enrolled in their special education programs, and then the percent that are on their free and reduced lunch process. So those are the closest in similarity schools from the entire cohort there. And you can see here that Wenatchee High School came in the highest of those schools that were in the closest similarity score index. That is not the case in all of our schools or programs, but that just happens to be what the data is for Wenatchee High School. I'll let you look at it for a second because it's a lot of information and a lot of data.
What is a high score? What is a low score?
Yes,
What is
so
the measurement?
1 through 10 is you have a score, low score is a 1 and the high score is a 10. And in this range, what you'll see with some colors, if your Washington School Improvement Framework score has a 7 or above, it's in green. And if the Washington School Improvement Framework has a score of 6 to 7, they're highlighted in blue. Everything else is not highlighted. So your goal is to get closer to 10 is what you'd like to see.
And since we went through this, though, WSIF score quite a bit with the Columbia stuff.
Yes.
Like just noted that everything's weighted differently. So like 50% of that overall score is growth.
Mhm.
So you're not necessarily having all the factors that are being factored in equally.
Right.
So.
Yep. And to your point, our elementary schools don't have things like dual credit. Our elementary schools don't have the 9th grade piece. The elementary schools don't have the graduation rates. So there are different pieces that are scored along the continuum. So yeah, understanding that is important too. All right. I appreciate the context there. Moving on to Pioneer Middle School. We have shown here is Pioneer Middle School with the 9 closest schools within the similarity factors of enrollment, MLL learners, students with disabilities and low socioeconomic status. And 5 schools came in lower than Pioneer of the 9 shown here with the schools of the closest similarity score. Again, it's a lot of data, but you start to recognize the pattern of the data. Probably start moving through these a little faster as you get used to how it's kind of laid out. And this is just, tonight is basically just a sharing of this data with you and then some takeaways that we can talk about toward the end. Orchard Middle School here with 9 of its closest schools within the ranges. 4 schools came in lower than Orchard Middle School out of the 9 shown here. And out of the schools, what is interesting to see is that the different schools that are comparison, are comparing, you're not seeing a lot of the same schools over all of the middle school sections. There are different schools because they're more likely similar to the different makeups of the other schools.
It seems like some of the populations for the Orchard comparison would be more appropriate for the Pioneer, but
Yeah,
I
some
didn't
of
see
them get
them
pretty high.
there, so.
And that's, I
it's
think, the uniqueness
strange.
that Martin brought up too, is what you see in the similarity rating from Stern's Analytic. These are the schools that are closest in all of the categories, but there's some populations that are pretty darn high.
I'm just curious, looking at the slide 10, how did Ray Reynolds? I'm just intrigued because that's where my oldest is at in the Pasco School District. Their student population is massive at 1250. How does that fit in with our total enrolled students in this data? Is it only just because of the ELL and the SPED and the?
Yep.
Okay.
You have to take all 4 of those weighted categories into account to come up with the most similar schools. So it may not be super similar in the population, but when it comes to, our English language learners and the students with disabilities and the low socioeconomic status, it fits into that.
That demographic itself. Okay.
Mhm. And you're on the Foothills one? Okay, so we can move to the Foothills one. You're good. You're.
I did say side 10.
Yeah, you did. So that's good. Yeah, so then we have the Foothills Middle School data. Again, so the Ray Reynolds was the one that you have familiarity with, Miranda. Okay. That is a big school.
They're building another one.
They have the population for it, apparently.
Just an observation here with the middle schools.
Uh-huh.
Majority of these schools within the 3 Pioneer, Orchard and Foothills, mainly Foothills and Pioneer, most of these schools are on the west side.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is it because we tend to be a larger district on the east side? I mean, Sunnyside, Yakima, but then the further east you move, these schools don't seem to be represented here.
That is an interesting observation. Yep.
A Spokane School District or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. They're all factored into the equation. In fact, and I can share the Stern Analytics spreadsheet with you so you can do your own massaging if you'd like, but in the cohort, all of the Washington State schools are actually listed in the all tab. And then they're extrapolated out here. And I imagine when these are snapshots from each of the school's spreadsheets. And so if I look at Foothills Middle School, every middle school is listed on there. So you can find them in there eventually, but their similarity score just gets further and further away. Yeah. But I'll share that data with you because I think it's important that you see the full scope of it aside from just the snapshot here of those that are most similar. I'll move into, unless there are some other questions, I'll move into the elementary schools. Fantastic. Okay. Washington Elementary is the first school that we have data for here. Shown here is Washington Elementary with its 9 closest schools. You can see that we have a couple of schools there that made it into the blue and the green categories. But overall, the same look and the same feel of the data from the previous sections. See Kashmir popped up in there. Couple of Marysville schools. Lewis and Clark is shown here with its 9 closest schools on the range here. The interesting thing about Lewis and Clark that I want to note though is these schools are not, they're not dual language schools. These are just elementary schools. And so that's an interesting piece. And it would be also very interesting if we had a list of the dual language programs in the state. That would be a further piece of data that would be interesting for us to see from Lewis and Clark on how they compare with the other dual language programs in the state. But this is just strictly based on elementary schools and the Stearns analytics similarity scoring. And then we have Lincoln Elementary. We have John Newberry Elementary. I thought at first that we had a couple of Cascade Elementaries that were close, but nope, seemingly not. We have one from Kennewick and one from Tacoma. Yeah,
These are lower evergreen schools.
yeah. We have Sunny Slope Elementary there. And then Mission View Elementary. Which also has Columbia in there. And then we have Columbia Elementary as our last elementary school here. We did not receive comparison cohort data for our 2 ALE programs, Westside High School and Valley Academy. Westside High School had a Washington School Improvement Framework score of 3.5. Valley Academy had a Washington School Improvement score of 7.5. And of course, the Tech Center students are reported through Wenatchee High School or Westside High School, respectively.
I was going to ask about alternative schools. Is the methodology the same for those schools then? We just didn't have data and comparables?
Yeah, so they said that the similarity score is not computed if the enrollment differs by more than 1 standard deviation. So if you look at if you go back to your statistics work there, they did not have the lack of schools with similarity scores were the reason why we didn't get the data back.
I was wanting to make follow up on Maria's comment about where the schools are from. I
Yeah.
quickly tallied 25% of them are east side. And so I suspect that's probably about the distribution of people between the east side of the Cascades and
Okay.
the west side. And if you throw in a couple of Mount Vernons, which I often think is as close to us as we get,
Yeah.
if it's 25% east side, it doesn't look like it's totally out of line.
And maybe that would be a further piece of information for us to look at too, is can Stearns just do east side schools too?
No, definitely, every one of these individual aspects
Yeah.
should be explored. I just wanted to
Mhm.
bring that up and quickly because it raised a doubt in my mind and I spent some time looking at it now.
Well, I think a significant difference between east side, west side is, that's not factored into here is our migrant population.
Yeah.
And we see higher migrant identified students on the east side of the state versus the west side of the state.
Wonder if they can do some filtering with that demographic as well, because that could be interesting. Excellent. So the next slide just has our questions again that we had questions for today's presentations. And so who are the students represented in the data? And all students are represented in the data over time. The Washington School Improvement Framework is 3-year data average of schools' performance. And then how are we leveraging the strategic plan with this data? And the strategic plan covers so much of the scope of what we want for the Wenatchee School District to do. And the improvement framework is very similar when we think of the holistic performance of a school: proficiency, growth, attendance, multilingual student performance, graduation, 9th grade success, and dual credit for high school. That is kind of all the things that are incorporated in our strategic plan as well, comprehensively looking at our district. What are the next steps? And each of the schools have their own Washington School Improvement Framework performance data, and we'll use them as they close the loop on this year's school improvement planning process, and then also use those to begin as a leverage point for their learning improvement teams on next year's goal setting process for that school improvement plan. Now, our schools that are specifically in school improvement, they have a different layer of accountability with the state as well, and they do that work systemically and year round. And when is the next check-in on our data? So our next check-in on our data will be in August for our preliminary Big Six data in the fall. And then we'll have another look at the Smarter Balanced Assessment data, both holistically, and we'll have the comparison data with the cohort through the Stearns Analytics. And then our next check on the Washington School Improvement Framework will be next year at this time. And that'll be based on 24, 23, and 22 3-year averages for the work.
So to clarify, we pull from 3-year averages, but we review this every year.
Uh-huh.
Okay, because I
Yep.
thought we did this last year too.
Yep. Yeah, and we'll do it again next year as well too. It'll just be a different 3-year gap.
And so do some
Or not
schools
gap.
fall in or out of state monitored school
Mhm.
improvement annually?
Yep. Yeah, there's not as much fluidity as you might think, but there are schools that will pop out because of their performance, and then schools that will pop into that performance as well. So that changes over time. Unless you're school like Westside and they're in it for comprehensive graduation rates, and they're probably going to be in that for a long time. Good questions. The next slide here is the impact of the data. And I just kind of stated it's good to know where we stand in the state with like schools. It is good for us to have the data that we can use to guide our school improvement work, because I think that comprehensive look helps us. And then knowing that there are ways to leverage this data in support of student academic learning, as well as social and emotional growth. And then some of the big ideas and the takeaways in my mind here are compared to our cohort, similar schools for the most part, a lot of our schools are on track, which is great. However, we can do better, and we know we can do better, and we will do better in the future. We also need to think about how future challenges that come from budget reductions will necessitate our diligence, not only as a school board, but as a district, to maintaining high academic standards and helping our students achieve the goals that they are already. We know we have systems in place to continue to see this growth, and that the Wenatchee School District will continue providing excellence in learning. Those are all kind of the big ideas or takeaways that I wanted to share with you and the board. But are there other comments or questions for me that I can take on? Because that is the end of the data for me to share right now. Yeah.
I just really want to kind of set the scene the way I see it. We've just looked at composites.
Yes.
Which, they're useful in that they give you an idea of where you are in the pack.
Mhm.
just generally. It can get rid of myths and misinformation to some extent. But the real value of any of this kind of data has to be in its disaggregated form, because the purpose of the data isn't compare ourselves to somebody else. It's
Right.
not trying to get on the athletics podium. It's figuring out where are the areas we need to work. And so I think, you know, I know that the district looks in detail at that. The school improvement plan, I think, is about 150 pages, if I remember rightly. And now you get into somewhat similar, but steps that are taken. So I think this is a good start. But I think you really make it in general, make the point generally at the end, is that the value is in where it gives us pointers as to where we need to act.
Yep.
And, you know, if we take that to heart, and we get rid of false impressions, then we think we're on a good track.
I appreciate that, Martin. Thank you. Other thoughts?
Well, it's clear that your schools with higher percentage of ELL, special ed for reduced lunch have lower scores.
Mhm.
Specifically in our district, 70% of between our elementary and our middle schools, the higher for reduced percentages, the lower the score.
Mhm.
I mean, what Martin was saying, out of that, because that percentage is the highest for the free and reduced, you know, we're taking low socioeconomic, what does that breakdown look like? If we disaggregate that percentage, what does it look like? I'd be curious to know what it looks like for our schools and see how, and the overlap too, you know, a lot of your ELLs are probably free and reduced. So understanding, going deeper into the disaggregated data will help us understand better what equitable practices can we implement to meet the needs of the students that are in that percentage.
Absolutely. Thanks, Maria. Other thoughts or comments? Okay, thank you. I appreciate the time today, and we can jump into the next part of today's agenda, which is our policies first read. And the policy committee is on my left. Appreciate that. So thanks everyone for being here, and we'll jump into the first policy of the evening, 6700 as our nutrition policy. And just want to add here that this was a larger policy that thankfully WASDA has separated into 3 different policies. So you'll see that is 6700, 6701, and 6702. It used to all be one. And so it's much easier to consume, digest, and manage from the district perspective now that they're kind of broken out. And so the policy committee looked at this, and this policy outlines the way in which the district handles all things related to nutrition and our breakfast and lunch programs in the district. Policy, as I mentioned, has now been divided into nutrition, recess, fitness, and wellness. The only thing that we really massaged here is you can see it in the strike through, is we changed a little bit of what I would call deficit language, maybe to positive language in that first paragraph, as it mentioned that students would be likely to learn, and we used to change that with more prepared to learn. So we liked the semantics of that a little bit better, and we did that also on the recess and physical activity and the wellness policies as well. So and that was it. And we moved that one forward. Any other thoughts from the two of you? Questions or concerns from other board members?
I have a couple of minor questions. We're just dealing with the whole batch in one go, right?
We can definitely do that. There's the only thing that we changed in the other ones were the same language as well,
Yeah,
but we
I
had
got the impression you've been, okay.
yeah, I have some
Um,
other things to share though. Yeah.
And this is just for my own education. On the recess and physical activity, it looks like it's written funding available. So there's a lot of caveats. That is no change from where we've been before.
Right.
Okay, I just want to check that.
That was great.
And then I was kind of curious on the safety one for bus drivers, they only ought, not shall have, that was a strikeout on that one. Have the protocol for an accident. Let me see if I can find where it is.
Oh. Oh, let's see,
It's policy,
6605.
yeah, 6605, section B. That a copy of the emergency procedures used to say will be located in each bus and now says ought to be located in each bus.
Okay.
And I'm reading like an insurance inspector on that. I wonder why that was
I don't think
changed.
that was our strike through, was it? Okay. If you don't mind, I'd love to go back and kind of go through them one by one, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
okay, sure.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was lumping them all together, but I do have comments from the.
Okay, no,
from
well, let's
each
go one by one. That's why I was confused. I
Okay,
thought we-
I'm
yeah.
sorry. That was me. So if there's no other questions on the nutrition one, then we'll move forward with that. Okay.
I guess my only comment is that I know we need to keep it here because things may change, but since we've been able to provide the free lunches now throughout the buildings and districts, a lot of this is currently not being practiced or used.
Right. Because until our grants run out. So which is a good clarification to add.
And I just wonder, to not be caught in a trap of we shall do this all the time if it's, unless circumstances, if we should put some caveats in there that unless circumstances are such that this is not, funding is available to render this practice not applicable,
Okay.
something like that. I mean, it's not material, but it just.
To address what section of that policy?
I'm just looking right now at the nutrition section. It
Uh-huh.
says a superintendent or designee shall be responsible for, and it provides things like,
Oh,
determining meal prices and having the board approve them annually. We, my knowledge, haven't done that in a couple years because we just have been able to offer them and assessing the applications and determining eligibility. And I know we do that to some degree for other purposes.
correct.
but-
Yes.
It may be helpful to have some caveat language in there so that we don't get somebody saying, you guys didn't fulfill your duties because you didn't do this little practice, even though we know that it has no basis because we are able to offer it without charge anyway. I don't know. Maybe
So
more
some-
trouble than it's worth, but it's just,
something to when applicable.
yeah, when applicable, set the rates or something.
When is that grant?
That's a great question.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure when the grant is up. Does anyone from the cabinet know when our CEP grant is up for all students? Okay, we can find that. Okay, so thank you, Julie. So a caveat for when and where applicable. Yeah, okay. Okay. I like it. And then for 6701, which is the recess and physical activity. This policy further outlines what recess truly should be and what the aspects of physical education look like. The rules and regulations and guidelines for recess and physical activity should be shared. We know that. And then again, the only thing that we really massaged there was the deficit language from positive from negative to positive, unless there is more from policy committee to my left.
Am I correct in that this entire policy only applies to elementary, or is recess specific to elementary and then the physical activity is specific to
Other grades.
district-wide?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I feel like the first paragraph then makes it feel like a little specific to elementary, and I was like, but maybe it's just the way I'm reading the first sentence.
Oh, that recess is an essential part of the day for elementary school students. Right.
Minor little thing.
Other thoughts? Alrighty. And then wellness, this policy stresses the importance of wellness throughout the district and supports a wellness committee. There is a focus on staff and students for the wellness committee and the wellness focus as well. Again, the only thing that we changed overall was the deficit language to positive language. And unless any other comments from, okay.
Just to highlight that, there's reference to wellness committee, which is something that, we touched on and talked
Yep.
about a little bit, and, that is in the works.
Yep, we will have to have a wellness committee. No, no, we have not completely established. There has been, years ago, when all of these were packaged together, we did have a wellness committee under the direction of Kent Getson back in the day, but we have not had one in a number of years, and so that's something that we'll be putting together. Right. Other thoughts? Comments, concerns, questions? All right, let's move into physical education and health class. This policy is focuses on quality health and fitness classes that align to the Washington State standards. The annual review of fitness classes with the listed provisions. This policy includes a list of requests, again, to Martin's observation there, subject are available when funding is available. So one of the things that we changed in here was we changed the word in the activity vigorous. We changed that to rigorous. On page 2 under best practices, it'll read students will be engaged in physical activity from moderate to a rigorous activity. Vigorous we felt was a little aggressive. We massaged that. But any thoughts or comments on this particular policy?
Yeah, I hate to do this. Can I go back to the wellness one
Sure.
going back to the wellness one real quick? To
Sure.
the extent we are going to establish a committee, it's not necessarily sitting well with me that we're adopting a board policy that says the district through a wellness committee will develop and implement a comprehensive wellness plan. I feel like there should be some element of board oversight of what they eventually, like the committee should make a recommendation to the board if they're going to be developing anything that gets implemented. Am I overreading that?
I mean,
It feels, I don't. I just feel like there should be, if a committee comes up with something, they should sort of get an element of board approval that this is the program being implemented.
I'm sure we can run a presentation through by the board and have some discussion with that.
I am not entirely sure. I mean, because if thinking about it, there's multiple different committees in the district. And do I feel we are in the realm of micromanaging to that level? I mean, if we're going to do it for the wellness committee, we are probably going to need to do it for all different committees at the district level. So it just seems so overwhelming and out of the realm of a policy board.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I mean, I agree, there's certain like department head oversight. You certainly have, when the board has outlined a policy that this is what we do, then the department heads go and execute and we don't have any. My concern is this feels a little like they would be establishing a wellness policy
Most of that. is-
without
Yeah.
us blessing it necessarily or having that. And I maybe fear what could be under it that we don't know anything about. And most of our committees are advisory if they're sort of developed at a board level. And so I don't know. I mean, we don't have one, so it's hard to know exactly what the scope of their work is. But I get concerned, what if this committee says all students shall enter counseling programs and they just get to go and implement it and we haven't reviewed or I mean, I assume they're gonna do what the state says they're supposed to do.
Well, it's very well articulated in the procedure, so I can share the procedure with you that outlines what the wellness committee does.
Okay, that may help, yeah.
Yeah, that'll help you a lot.
And that's what I'm wondering, should wellness procedure
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
rather than
there's
policy?
a wellness procedure that does go along with this as well.
As I was going to ask about whether this isn't dancing between procedure and policy, because this is the policy.
Right.
And I presume it is in compliance with state. It is short, sweet, and simple. And in that case, it really doesn't need a committee to establish it. But if we had a committee, they could work on the procedures. I'm fuzzying it up, but
Yeah.
I think we're getting, it seemed to me coming in cold that we might be crossing between procedures and policy and the way we're putting it together.
Well, why don't I share we have not, we have a procedure from WASDA. I don't know if it's gone through our cabinet vetting, but I can share that with the board in the weekly. And you can take a look at that and that might help us. One of the things that I'm sure we're all very uniquely aware of is we have another board meeting next Tuesday. And that will have the second read of these on there too. So I want to make sure you have all the information you need to be able to feel comfortable about that. So why don't I share the procedures and then you all can let me know how we feel about these on the second read. That might help. I appreciate the dialogue though. And the attention to detail. Thank you. Because we want to do what's best in the best interest of our district and the program. So I appreciate that.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're good. Thank you. And so the next one, this is the one Martin was talking about here. We have, even though some of the changes in 6605 reflect that we are not required by law to host an advisory committee, we still have, we are still going to have our safety committee group in the districts, and we'll still be working with law enforcement, the city of Wenatchee, and the Traffic Safety Commission. And safety is our paramount duty in the school district, and it will not be compromised. So I wanted to make sure that that's aware if you have been reading the policies beforehand. So this is a comprehensive policy to address safe bus riding, walking, and biking to school. Highlights include school bus conduct and safe routes to school planning. And just wanted to give the policy committee a chance to share anything, and then we need to talk about Martin's concern too. So.
I think both Miranda and I felt that the timeliness of this one is on point, especially as we as we transition our Columbia students. There has been concerns about safe walking routes. We kind of went through this one with a little bit more of a fine-tooth comb. And, again, just paid more closer attention to this. Not that we didn't before, but the timing of it was very instrumental. The safe routes to school plan, that is all new language that was added. And we saw a little bit in the presentations prior to today's meeting. We talked a little bit about the labeling of the arrows and the traffic patterns. Again, just addressing some concerns that were brought up by the Columbia Parent Advocacy Group.
Absolutely. And Martin, to your point, we want to make sure that we have addressed what was struck through and eliminated so that we have that. What page was that one on?
It's on.
The fourth line of new section B. That was
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not normally very difficult to require a document it be inside a vehicle.
Right.
The other one maybe gives more leeway, but that particular one, it's like having your license on the.
Mm-hmm. It does make sense.
But that's the way I would look at it from an industrial safety point of view.
Yep.
Yeah, I echo that. I think if we can't have it physically available, making sure that there's some way that the resource is available to the bus driver, because I can see it in both eyes. We don't want to guarantee something is there and, oh, shoot, there's a reserve bus out that didn't happen to have the manual, but the driver knows they've got access to it on a district device and they could pull it up if they needed to. So I see a reason to not create a gotcha kind of situation, but we need to ensure that they have access to it at all times if they're operating a bus. A similar concern that Martin raised is in the first sentence. It says the bus driver, and it struck will, and it says should follow the emergency procedures in accordance with district procedure. I don't know why we would be striking they will unless we can foresee a situation where like a district procedure may not apply. In which case I would say something like the bus driver will follow, either except in some other type of emergency or unless inapplicable, the driver will follow established emergency procedures. It just seems odd that we say should.
Right. I think the only reason that that's in there is if there was some sort of emergency procedure that we would need to follow that also at the same time puts students at risk in a further manner. I don't know what exactly that might be. But there are all sorts of strange situations that our buses have been put in, but we can take a look at that and see if we can find out what exactly that might be.
I mean, could it be or applicable state or federal
Yeah,
laws?
will
Like,
to
it's
the
like,
extent
yeah, it's
applicable,
this
follow
or
the
that, right?
procedure
Yeah,
or-
it's not like, or just cowboy and off
Right.
onto the sunset, right? Like, we don't want that.
Right, because I don't want to, I mean, I don't think a bus driver would ever do anything to jeopardize
Sure.
a student, but
Right.
to be in a situation to say, well, it just said I should follow it and I decided not to today.
Right.
So, yeah, so should to the, or will to the maximum extent possible, follow the procedure or something. I mean, I see the idea of protecting the driver from an absolute certainty because every situation is different, but I also want to ensure our students and public that we will follow established procedures when they do
Yeah.
in fact apply.
Absolutely. Excellent. We'll make some of those massages before, well, I don't know how do we make massages when the board packet goes out tomorrow? We'll send an updated board information on the policy review so we can get that to you if that's acceptable.
I mean, unless there's any reason we have to adopt these next meeting, I'm not opposed to pushing it to the second meeting in June either.
Perfect.
I
June
mean,
25th, we'll do the second read. That sounds very good. It gives us some time to massage. It's just so strange to have
I know,
our
back-
board back to back. But it's we're all making ourselves available for West Side's graduation, so that's awesome. Okay, let's see. 2022 electronic resources and internet safety. This policy is helping to create safe and proficient users with technology in schools as in the workplace. Internet safety is a big component of this policy and the expectation that there is some annual training that is happening there as well. And I will lump these two kind of together because 2022 and 2023 do kind of coincide. The next one is digital citizenship and media literacy. So the next one is intentionally helping students learn and use technology in the 21st century, analysis, evaluation, reflection, appropriate and healthy relationships with technology, online safety, media literacy, fair use and copyright. I know I'm just listing these on, but they're all seemingly important and they're very different. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure the policy committee is requested an update on the when and the where that this is happening, because we know how important this information is, but we don't know exactly where in the continuum of the curriculum it is embedded. And so that's one thing that I want to get back to this group. So it's very important. As Maria had shared, our district is a one-to-one district. And so these topics are about lifelong learners and students that will have technology that we don't even know that exists right now at their fingertips in years to come. So we want to make sure that they have the appropriate tools and understanding to get there. So that's a still to come. I don't have that answer quite yet, but by the 25th, I would like to have that for us. Did I miss anything though, policy committee? Okay. Questions or concerns from our team? Yeah, both of those.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah, the only one actually that I had difficulty digesting was the digital citizenship and media literacy. And it's not really that there's anything that I didn't agree with. It seemed to me more of a preamble writing up expectations than a policy.
Hmm.
And I wondered whether we were moving ahead of ourselves or into a development area rather than a policy area. So I would ask that as a question.
Okay. And I know that Ron Brown, our detective, the detective, he sometimes is a detective, but He's our, obviously our Director of Technology and Innovation. He was doing a lot of work based on what other schools had produced and massaged with WASDA. And I know he actually slowed down on a lot of the 2023, there's F2, F3, and F4, which are the artificial intelligence and the code of conducts. Those are not, you won't find them. Because those are policies that he's like, whoa, we need to slow down because we're not ready for some of this. And he did feel like he was ready on the digital citizenship and media literacy. But if it doesn't feel like policy, then that also is something for us to look at as well.
Well, I would like to know what other board members' reaction is.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a caution, not a.
Yeah. Pump the brakes.
I think it's just when I reviewed it, it's trying to be a step ahead of everything. Cause I think of this too, at like my day-to-day activities and my job perspective, you want to be at least 2-3 steps ahead, then 2-3 steps back. It looks a little daunting, and it's something that we as a district may not be as familiar with, but youth are familiar with it, maybe a little bit at some capacity. So I think it's just us laying down that groundwork and defining all of this and setting a basis moving forward. Really, at least we'll have something here implemented and what the district will follow through. And then once that time comes, like what Corey had previously mentioned, then we'll actually have a basis of how to best process move forward in all of this. Was what my take was in all of it.
Yeah, I can see that the overarching sort of policy statement is we understand this technology is there, and our ultimate goal with whatever comes under it is to be mindful, responsible digital citizens. But yeah, some of this is very much more of a just sort of a recognition that it exists. So it's kind of like a preamble. But I think that opens the door to being able to fit things under it. And so when things change very quickly, we can say, well, this is in the spirit of promoting digital citizenship. And so we've at least got something there to speak to something. Now, I don't want to open a door to where we can just create procedures and administrative things under it without any kind of oversight. But I think these are important concepts to have in front of us. But yeah, some of this feels more like a statement or a definition versus actually implementing a policy. This is our philosophy. I mean, there's a little bit of that in there, but I think the topics are so important that we need to make sure they're in front of us so that we don't lose sight of them.
Unconventional. I think that's a very good logical approach to it. I wonder whether we could either say that this is going to be reviewed in 12 or 18 months or something like that. So, because it is a fast changing situation and it could form itself. And that means that we adopt this, not really provisionally, we adopt it for real, but we know that we're moving in a changing world and we're going to look at it again.
We could ask artificial intelligence what they think about it. And go back at it.
And give you a really good answer. Having
Right.
used it a fair amount, like give you a great answer.
It would probably tell you never, this technology is sound.
Yes.
The reality is that, artificial intelligence is here.
Yeah.
We, as I think as educators, we need to use it as a tool in the educational world. How are we going to get ahead of it? How are we going to use it to support student learning? But at the same time, we are also made aware that artificial intelligence can also create lots of dangers in regards to cyberbullying. Just yesterday, I was listening to the news about artificial intelligence, pictures, modifications, whatnot. And so I think it doesn't go into the detail of it, but just making mention under the digital citizenship as this whole thing is evolving and our youth is finding different ways to use it for their benefit and also not.
Yeah.
I think we like Miranda said, let's be ahead of it.
Yeah.
Let's keep it there. You're talking about digital citizenship, ethics, behavior, cyberbullying. Unfortunately, it all fits in there.
It does. And to your point, Maria, thank you for that. The next three policies that I don't know if we'll have them ready soon. They'll probably be in the fall, but artificial intelligent classroom protocol, artificial intelligent code of conduct, huge, artificial intelligent use pledge. So those are some things that are on the horizon for us to take a look at coming forward. So I think those are big. And I like, Miranda, what you said about, staying ahead of some of these things, even if it means that we need to look at this in 12 to 18 months down the road.
Well, and just looking at the policy and practices on sort of the last page of that policy, it does say that we need, it does recognize that we need to annually review its policies and procedures for electronic resources. So I think that's in the spirit. And then what I was going to suggest adding was some authorization of the superintendent to develop sort of procedures on the fly as things come up, but it looks like that's already there anyway. So maybe,
Nicely done.
maybe it's,
I mean, I'll just add, like, we're being intentional about it, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, it'd be really nice to say, we're not gonna say anything about it until we figure it out, but like, it's moving so fast that we're not gonna figure it out. So this is just, we are doing our best right now. We're checking in frequently, and we're gonna make sure that students have, and teachers have the tools
Yeah.
to know what they should and shouldn't be doing. And we wanna, as a district, wanna support both groups and kind of learning, but also knowing that there's some boundaries in that.
Well said.
When I look at it and reread it, the area that gives me most concern are the two definitions. Those are the ones that to me are most loosely written. The actual steps that we would take, I think, I feel a lot more comfortable with.
Okay, with that looseness, are you suggesting that we do anything?
No, I'm
potentially, or-
thinking
Okay.
the definition is not the action policy.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
that might not keep up to date with a changing world, but when you look at the specifics of behavior, policy and practices, I think they then tighten down, and I'm comfortable with it the way it is.
Okay, I appreciate that. Excellent. Thanks for the robust discussion. I appreciate that. And that was the last of our policies for today. So we'll bring that back to second read on June 25th. And Julie, we're moving into the superintendent's report here, so I'll jump in and or just continue and we'll keep on moving. Just want to share there is no shortage of amazing things happening in the Wenatchee School District over the past few weeks, and we've got more amazing things coming. Just a quick, there's been a lot. It's been awesome. I'll go all the way back to the elementary track meet on May 16th, which it was a good time, was had by all of our schools were represented, including St. Joe's. And I usually, just so you know, when I usually volunteer for the elementary track meet, I'm a relay timer. That's my comfort zone. I don't want to be number one, but I want to be 2, 3, or 4. And this year I was kind of pushed out of my comfort zone, and I was okay with that, but I did the running long jump this year, and it was fantastic. The thing that I cherished the most was there's individual touch points with each child who's participating, and they get one practice and then they get 3 jumps. That's a lot. When it was amazing how, but so I got to fist bump every kid 4 times and tell them how amazing they did. It was awesome. So I just had a blast. So hopefully the running long jump is now my comfort zone. So I love that. Also on May 20th, on Monday, there was an AVID annual ceremony, which was just an amazing testament to our incredible students, but also our incredible staff that's preparing and challenging our students to take advantage of rigorous coursework and plan their lives as college students. And AVID stands for Advancement via Individualized Determination. It was just really, really cool. Many of our students start their AVID journey in 7th grade, and they were ending that journey as graduates on the stage. It was really cool. Each graduate had their own slide, which talked about their accomplishments and all the schools that they were accepted in. And then they had to highlight their most important moment in high school. And then they each got to give a rose to someone who was important to them along their journey. So lots of moms got roses. It was pretty cool. And it was just a great night. So, and then as Frankie mentioned, West Side Spaghetti Feed and Silent Auction was a blast. the live entertainment was amazing, and it was students from our Wenatchee High School and West Side High School, so that was awesome. There were great auction items. There were great prices for auction items. So there was just, we had to go around and kind of outbid some people. And then the live auction was my favorite. History teacher Wade Holmes is quite a character and had fun with the crowd as they were auctioning off student and staff artwork, which was great. There were a couple of hot ones, I believe, that these two were involved in with some bidding. There's some hot items going on. No one got hurt. It was good. But a couple of students outbid themselves, which was kind of fun. So raised their hand at $5 and then no one else was bidding. So they raised their hand at $10. And so it was super cute. It's like, oh my gosh, they really wanted that. It was good though. It was a great time for Cooper, and a lot of Pioneer staff, a lot of West Side staff and students, obviously. And then finally, Sign Idol was last Friday, and that was awesome. The second annual Sign Idol. I went to the first one last year by myself, and this year I made Haley come with me, and we had a blast. American Sign Language students and club use sign language to their favorite songs with costumes and props and choreography, and just very proud of our students, very proud of the ASL program. And it was a hoot. And Martin, you had a good time as well. So it was good. So, all right, that's it for the superintendent's report. Thank you.
All right, moving on to board communication. Start at this end this time.
Fortunately, I have a lot to report on too. I'm going to quickly, I'm sorry Frankie's not here, spaghetti feed. I'm always impressed by the community spirit and teamwork that you see. And when Frankie spoke and gave credit to faculty and the whole building and the institution, that is kind of the mood that you had there. So yes, it was a great event, and it demonstrated the fine attitudes of that institution. I had so much fun at 9th grade engagement night at the high school. It was just exhilarating. And for I'd never been before. The corridors get filled with tables for clubs, sports, CTE, all sorts of activities. The students have a lot of fun, underclassmen and departing seniors recruiting and talking. And I think there was a pretty decent turnout. And it really demonstrated the wide value of multiple activities in a school district of all kinds that reinforce each other. You would sometimes see a person working at 3 different desks. And not everybody does that, but it was a great event, and I think it was very powerful. I had a quarterly seminar on family engagement strategies with Stanford Children in Washington. I've been following that series, and they're focusing on dual credit of all kinds, and also what can that do to increase family engagement in varying ways. Actually, I'll give you one example. They talked about giving early exposure to seeing post-high school community colleges or universities. Things like that I see happening in this district were pretty much covered in recommended practices. On the downside, you see them that we all face is how do we make schools appear to be relevant and attack absenteeism and disaffection. But I think that's a dual credit, engaging families. That's the heart of what we're trying to do. And so that was a good learning experience. I missed the workshop because I had to go over for the quarterly migrant education state committee meeting. As usual, we learned a lot about that. One thing I learned from an organization that's Mexican and North American based, they're very impressed with what Washington State in general does for migrant education. They said, you don't see what happens in this state or in this district in many other places. And there's some, Corey has agreed that we're going to do our second debriefing after the meeting. I want to pay tribute to Teresa Godina, our migrant recruiter. She is retiring or ending her 4-year term. You're only allowed to have 4 years. So she will be leaving. It would be nice if this district could manage to fill another position on that committee, and we can see whether we would do it. But I just want to pay tribute to Teresa's work and say that that's an organization where we can bring ideas back to the district, and that I think it's useful. And yes, Sign Idol was great. That's about it.
Thank you. Tucker, anything?
I have nothing.
Miranda?
So on the 15th, I got to go with Mission View Elementary third graders to Confluence Park to watch them be educated on their salmon release. And then I believe is the Yakima Nation tribe, give them a more of a holistic approach about the effects of, with polluting safety using the waters, not using too much in the shower, not running the drains, no trash. This is where the salmon goes. There was a lot of games showing how the salmon as babies make their way up to the ocean and back, and the predators that they meet along the way. It was a very good interactive game. And then all the kids get to raise a salmon from an egg until about like a little teeny tiny thing, and they get to release the salmon into the Columbia, which I didn't know. Those babies that they had just released, all the third graders, are going to stay at Confluence Park for about a year and a half. And then it's going to make their way up to the ocean. And they are all tagged, I learned, in some capacity. So I believe, and it's going to take about 3 years for the fish to get back to Confluence Park. And they've only seen one or two come back from the, yeah. So the odds.
If you've ever been on that field trip and you've seen how those third graders treat those fish, it's not that
Yeah.
surprising.
No, so, but they were, that's the ones that they have found. I don't know if that's like accurate, but it's a very small number of which came back. It was pretty cool. The kids really liked it. It's a big deal to them. So that was their big science project that they've worked on all year. And also and going to the spaghetti feed, I went with my father-in-law, who was an educator at Westside for a very long time. It was my first time going. It was a lot of fun. Great community. Great members from the community came, educators, everyone. And then, yes, the live auction was very exciting. Yes, I did go head to head with somebody on a really beautiful painting, which was done by a student at Westside. And the educator, when I went to pick up the portrait, the backstory for that student was really great. And they have a lot of their artwork presented in the hallways at Westside. They weren't there because I was really bummed that they weren't there at school, but I did meet with their sibling. I told them how much it was paid for that day and got my picture with the picture itself. So they got to send it to their siblings. So, and they were a first time Westside student that joined in the middle of the year. So it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. So.
Maria?
I don't have anything to report. However, I do have a request for hopefully the next meeting. Well, that's Tuesday. So maybe I was hoping to get some information before the end of the school year for the transition plan for our Columbia students and families, as well as our educators. I think it'd be good for us to know what the district is doing, what boxes have been checked off, what does summer activity look like, fall kickoff, all of the, not just family events, student orientation, but also the communication piece, the support services that are going to be provided, et cetera. So again, next week is probably too soon. But I think it would be good for us to be informed on just everything that's happening and what's next.
Sounds great. June 25th we'll share that out. Awesome. Thank you.
And so moving on to mine, I'll kind of start in reverse order because that hit something I was going to touch on. We did hear a parent speak today about what the transition is looking like, or some still uncertainties about it. And I know we had talked at minimum in the budget committees about making sure that the families and students were going to feel welcomed once the decision was made. And we talked a little bit about having the principals making opportunities to come to the schools, maybe during the lunch hours or whatnot. And so it would be, and we talked a little bit about this at our agenda planning meeting this morning as well, about just an update on the transition and making sure that some of those thoughts and things are being done to help with some of the impacts that we know are happening. So we are sensitive to the concerns, and that has been expressed through this process, is making sure that the students, if and when a decision is made, that they are getting more opportunities to meet with their prospective teachers and principals and to feel welcomed well before the school year starts. So that would be helpful to get that information and share it.
Sorry, we will absolutely do that, and excited to share what the next steps are with those transition plans, and yeah, we'll be ready.
Thank you. So then just a few more of my sort of updates, I guess kind of going again. I have a third grader, so she got to do the salmon release too. So she released Bob into the confluence, and it is, I know Bob was her fish, but it's such a well done experience for these third graders, and I applaud the district for continuing that. I think it does make for a very meaningful experience for these students. I learned a whole lot about salmon when she was done with that field trip that I wasn't able to go, but I learned a lot from her, and the energy and excitement they bring from that is fantastic, and so I'm very glad that that is something we are able to make available to students. Other updates, I also was able to go to the elementary school track meet. I had a little participant there, but it was truly a joy after having a very tough week, tough meeting the day before to be able to go out there and see a lot of smiling, celebrating faces. Everybody's in it for the kids and having a great experience. It didn't minimize the difficulty of anything we had done or that is happening through transition, but it was a great celebration of all the elementary students that were able to participate and see the families, and it was a lot of fun. So enjoyed that. May 17th, Corey and I participated in the Chelan County leadership meeting again. They've now decided to hold it monthly with the agency elected meeting with the a manager or administrator from each agency and just kind of talking about ongoing projects. It's been really helpful to kind of get some real-time updates on what is the status of Microsoft and Amazon and those areas that could help grow our district in the future. And then interesting to be able to just talk to the PUD about some of the partnerships that we need to work on them with when it comes to our facilities and things. So it's proven to be a really interesting and valuable, although I find myself envious about some of the funding that some of them get to, the growth in funding that they get. I'm like, could you help us legislate, please, for better school funding? But it has been a really interesting meeting and very good to help us keep a pulse on what's going on in Chelan County, and so that we can partner with them when opportunities present themselves. And I was not able to make it to the spaghetti feed, but I was traveling out of town, but I'm very glad that most of you were, because I know that is such a great event and for a very, very good cause. And I'm glad it was such a success. And a big thank you for having a representative from Cafe here to provide translation services as needed. I know I didn't make that announcement during the public comment because it was a little sparser crowd than we're used to, but I do think that that's a partnership that is very valuable to the district. And so I just want to make sure that you are recognized and we appreciate you. And that's all I've got. So with that, unless anyone else has anything. All right, next is executive session. So the school board will now recess into executive session for a period of 30 minutes until, oh, I can't do the math, 7:53. To evaluate the qualifications of an applicant for public employment, to review the performance of a staff member, or to review and evaluate complaints or charges brought against a director or staff member. Pursuant to District Policy 1410 and RCW 4230-110, this discussion will be closed to the public. The board is not expected to take final action following the executive session. The board is extending executive session for an additional 15 minutes. Ready? The board is extending executive session for an additional 15 minutes. The board is extending executive session for 10 minutes. The board will be extending executive session for 5 minutes. The school board meeting is adjourned. No action is taken.